There we go. All right. Hello, everybody. I'll just start again. My name is Kevin McGowan. I'm with the Department of Public Works for the City of Sausalito. This evening, I'm privileged to be administering this meeting on, oh, we're doing one more thing here. There we go. I'm privileged to let people into the meeting at the same time. To administer this meeting on behalf of the local architects group regarding the Ferry Landside project visioning for this area of Sausalito. The general intent of the meeting is to gather public comment with regard to the current funded project, the Ferry Landside Improvement Project, as well as gather public comment for the overall vision of the area which the local architects group have been doing for the last several.
Whoops, when you got muted.
I think, Kevin, you went on mute by accident.
Yep, not sure how. Nothing's easy. So I'm going to share my screen here in a minute for a PowerPoint presentation. Please bear with me. All right. Go. All right, hopefully everybody can see my screen. It says the Ferry Landside Improvement.
Yep.
Great. All right. This evening, I'd like to introduce some folks as well who are on the call. Very important. And these folks are part of the local architects group and have really helped out quite a bit with the city of Sausalito and donated their time to this project. This would be Bill Hines, Michael Rex, Jacques Ullman, and Bob have really stepped up to help with the project itself. This evening, I'd like to start with a short presentation for the Ferry Land Improvement Project, just to get everybody up to speed on this project. The second part of the program this evening is a presentation by the local architects group regarding their work on a vision for the parking areas around the Ferry Landside area and a little bit more detailed into parking lot 1. I am hoping that we can have public comment after each part in order to kind of address some of the different nuances of each portion of this presentation. Even though I have it noted in this slide of about an hour, if we finish a little bit early with the first part, we can jump right into part number 2, which is the visioning. So we're gonna have different speakers as well, everybody knows. And I'll just.
Whoop, you got muted again.
Not my fault on that one. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. There we go. All right, so let's start with the Ferry Landside project, the area around where the ferry docks in Sausalito. A little bit of background for everybody. There have been quite a few presentations to the City Council regarding this project in the past, which detail the history behind this area. I do recommend reviewing past staff reports on this, and that means videos as well that are on the city's website. If there are questions related to how we have arrived at this point with this project. I'll give you a little bit of background, but it's only a couple pictures. So the city owns the area in which the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transportation District docks their ferry. The city leases this property to the district. The district is planning to replace their existing ferry dock, and the district has postponed that specific work during the recent pandemic and now anticipates starting construction in 2022. A little bit about what their work is. In order to replace the existing ferry dock, the district anticipates utilizing the existing dock, and I'll show a little stuff on my computer here. Here's the existing dock. They're going to build a little walkway. They'll move this one over in order to build a new ferry dock. At the same time, they anticipate running the ferries during this construction. Most of the work on the ferry dock will be performed from the water side. However, the district has noted that the contractor may need a laydown area on the in parking lot 1 if they intend to do some work from the land side. In October 2017, the city granted conditional approval to the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transportation District to repair their dock system. Golden Gate has agreed to pass funding to the city from the Federal Transit Administration to support the improvements of the ferry Landside project. A total of $2.5 million is available at this time. This includes the design, construction, and construction management for the entire project. The grant language includes basic requirements to enhance the plaza area, enhance access to the ferry for pedestrians, cyclists, and includes circulation improvements as well as signage for the area. The project also requires that we install a new ticket kiosk in the area. The local architects group stepped in and helped us with this specific project. The funding allocated to this project is also limited. Total project cost of $2.5 million leaves approximately $1.9 million for construction. That's not a lot in this day and age. Last year, the City Council recommended utilizing a local architects group to assist staff with this project. The group's goals were composed of several aspects, including implementing improvements in compliance with a federal grant that conform with a long-term vision of this area of Sausalito. The main emphasis of this group was to develop design features that can be supported by the funding available for the project and that easily dovetail into future improvements for the area. This includes, but it's not limited to, obviously what we said, circulation elements, incorporation of space and views of this area, as well as anticipated future improvements such as the North-South Greenway and a sense of place to encourage interest in the downtown area. The local professionals group recognized early that a phased approach associated with improvements is preferred, especially with a limited budget. Keep in mind that these individuals have volunteered their time over the last year to review and develop concepts for this area. So let's take a look at some of the things that they've come up with. And just to orient folks of where we were talking about, this area is where the initial ferry Landside project is located. And it's basically concentrated around parking lot 1. So hopefully those on the call are familiar with this area. Where my cursor is Anchor Street, the former Bank of America building, Bridgeway, El Portal, and the ferry dock is out here with parking lot 1 in the center. Since the budget for the ferry Landside project is limited, the architects group developed a phased concept approach which can be addressed if funding is available for each piece of the vision. Option 1, the interim vision focuses on expanding the existing footprint for pedestrian improvements with the emphasis on sticking to the $1.9 million available for the construction. So there's going to be some arrows that come up on your screen to show which piece we're talking about. And the first part is the landing plaza. Hold on, there we go. Improvements to the ferry landing plaza, right, are in that area. Improvements to the drop-off area were kind of contemplated as well. A gateway plaza, this is at the end of Tracy Way. The intent is to kind of close this off because that askewed angle of Tracy Way at this point tends to be a problem for traffic. Bike parking and queuing as well, kind of moving it away from the original Tracy, putting it on the other side. Maybe some seasonal bike parking over near B of A building. And you can see our arrows are kind of mixing up on the screen, but I just want to run through these. So a connection to the North-South Greenway and more of a pedestrian-friendly area on El Portal, including outdoor dining. The intent when these folks originally took a look at the plan was to keep the existing trees. Now, keep in mind that this is a preliminary sketch, and once our engineer dives into some of the details, some of these may not stay in the plan just because there isn't enough space. The group also took a look at planting and stormwater treatment as well. So that was the original schematic of option 1. The local architects group also came up with additional improvements to the area that can be added if funding is available. These include a pedestrian promenade from the B of A building, or the former B of A building, as well as modifications to El Portal and pedestrian modifications in this area as well. Our consultant, who is BKF Engineers, and Becky Dower will make a short presentation in a slide or two. But looking at the details for this, there may be some issues associated with the trees, as I've mentioned before. Keep in mind that option 2 and option 1 are conceptual at this point. If this is pursued, there may be more reductions in parking to accommodate the promenade area. A diagram showing the reduction of the bike queuing near Gabrielson Park as well may be considered. If these alternatives are pursued, some detailed analysis will be needed for the possible reduction in parking and other amenities. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Becky Dower. She is our consultant from BKF Engineers to talk about this is a detailed slide for looking at the engineering approach and developing a full construction set. So with that, I'll turn it over to Becky.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction. As Kevin noted, I am a member of the design team, and my role on the project is to take the conceptual design prepared by the architect group, as well as comments from the public, and turn those into drawings for construction. So on the slide in front of you here, this is a preliminary engineering layout of the improvements. This layout closely follows the intent of that conceptual option 1 that Kevin reviewed just a moment ago. Underneath the exhibit, you'll see that's an aerial of the existing conditions, and that's so that we can get an idea for how the new improvements relate to the existing improvements out there. Not shown for clarity only on this exhibit are features such as landscaping, furnishings, alternative concrete and pavement materials, etc. Again, those have only been omitted for clarity so that we can focus this discussion on the new improvements and how they relate to the existing features. So the existing parking lot has 180 parking stalls. With this layout shown in front of you, we can accommodate about 157 parking spaces. That reduction in 23 parking spaces was made so that we can accommodate an expanded plaza area here, as well as a drop-off area that Kevin had mentioned earlier. The amount of area transferred from a parking lot use to a plaza use is about 6,000 square feet. So said another way, the plaza is being expanded by about 6,000 square feet with this option. In addition to expanding the plaza, this layout in this area here includes provisions for a drop-off area. So this layout can accommodate two-way vehicle traffic, as well as enough drop-off space for passenger loading and unloading for at least 5 vehicles. As we make our way up towards the top of the screen, head north through the parking lot, you'll notice that we're proposing a 10-foot wide concrete sidewalk that wraps around the north edge and then also continues down to the west, or the left-hand side of the screen. This replaces portions of an existing 6-foot sidewalk and then establishes new walkway in areas where there currently isn't walkway. You'll also notice that the boundaries of the parking lot in these areas very closely align with the existing parking lot. As we come back down to the south of the lot, this is where we had identified opportunities to expand the parking lot. As Kevin had mentioned earlier, we are looking at incorporating Tracy Way into the parking lot, and doing so by constructing a new concrete sidewalk in this area to prevent through traffic. Incorporating Tracy Way helps to improve circulation in the lot, particularly for people who are going to use the lot to do vehicle drop-off and are not necessarily going to park in the lot. Incorporating Tracy Way also gives us the opportunity to pick up a couple additional parking spaces as well, or to expand the drop-off area if needed. The amount of area that we are potentially adding to the parking lot by incorporating Tracy Way is about 6,000 square feet as well. So in addition to doing the parking lot reconfiguration work and the pedestrian improvements, we're also looking at doing pavement treatment work in this parking lot to address the deteriorating pavement. As Kevin mentioned, we have about 1.8, 1.9 million for construction, which is not a large sum of money for a project this size. So in light of that, we've been looking at pavement treatment options that are on the lower end of overall project cost. Currently, we're looking at two options. They're microsurfacing and grind and overlay. In general, the grind and overlay is a more invasive process, but it helps to expand the pavement and extend the pavement design life. Whereas a microsurfacing is more of a superficial surface treatment. It can improve texture and seal up the pavement, but it doesn't give us the same benefit of extended design life that a grind and overlay can. We find that the microsurfacing is about 1/10 of the cost of the grind and overlay, or grind and overlay is 10 times as much as a microsurfacing treatment. So there's a pretty big cost difference between these two pavement treatment approaches. We've done some very early estimating for the overall cost of this project that you're looking at on this layout here. We found that either the microsurfacing or the grind and overlay are within budget or reasonably close to our anticipated construction budget. However, since there is that wide disparity in the overall cost for the pavement treatment, we felt that it would be important to get some feedback from the community on the future intended use of this area so that we can understand if money is best spent on pavement treatment or if that money is best reserved for future amenities or current amenities at the expanded plaza. All right, and with that, Kevin, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you very much, Becky. Now, I did want to add a few things to what Becky had mentioned as well. Even though you might be seeing this on your screen, does this mean that this is solidified, that this is exactly what we're going to build? No, it does not. These are preliminary engineering drawings that we're trying to work out with the local architects group to make sure that we improve things based off of public input as well as the long-term vision for the area. And there may be some issues associated with keeping the trees. We may have some other issues associated with the north-south greenway as well. So I just want to let folks know that this is not the final end all. Hold on, I think my screen got locked. There we go. Now I'm hoping that we can get public input. And I'm going to kind of read through something first to hopefully jog folks' thinking on how to respond. So for this part of the evening's presentation, I'm hoping to hear from each one of you about what is proposed for this area of Sausalito. In other words, we kind of ran through that and I'm hoping you can comment on it. If you could limit your comments to 3 minutes, that would be great. I'm going to read a little paragraph that we always read in meetings, just so that everybody has a chance to speak if they are on a phone as well. So members of the public may comment on this item on the agenda during this period. The video and audio public comment participation is generally limited to 3 minutes per each speaker. If you would like to make a comment, please raise your hand in the Zoom application and you will be called upon when it is your time to speak. To raise your hand from a phone, press *9. Each speaker will be notified when they have approximately a minute left to speak. All calls will be muted after the time has expired. Please state your name for the record just so that we have it on the computer and before beginning your comments. Now, before I ask for who wants to raise their hand, there's some things that I'd love it if folks could comment on. So for instance, are you in favor of the proposed changes for the ferry landside? For the things that we've just kind of talked about expanding the plaza, making some circulation elements that are a little bit better, and some of the other details that were brought up. Are you in favor of that? It would be great to get your input. In addition, what are the most important amenities for the plaza and the area? And consider this, is parking the most important? Is the view from this area super important? How about the amenities such as benches and landscaping or hardscape to allow more pedestrians to queue on the ferry? Might want to consider just telling us what you think. Maybe there's artwork or improvements to a sense of place, wayfinding and signage, or maybe secure bike parking or EV stations, and maybe an improved drop-off area. So as you raise your hand, just think of that. So and another quick question, which kind of is underlying a lot of this as well. Would you be in favor if this project actually decreases the parking in parking lot 1? I know that Becky mentioned that it's kind of a wash right now what she's looking at as far as square footage, but just getting your input from the public would be great. Now, what I'm intending to do is to make sure that our architects get a chance to make a presentation at about 7 o'clock. So right now it's 6:20, so that gives us about 40 minutes to get public comment. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point, hopefully. And let's see, how do I do that? There it is. Sorry. There we go. So if anybody would like to comment on what we've provided so far, just give us your thoughts. That would be great. We can always move on to the architect's presentation as well. But for now, if anybody would like to raise their hand, I see Joan Cox has raised her hand. So seeing her first on the list, Joan, I will lower your hand and ask you to unmute yourself. Joan, are you there?
I am here. Hello, Kevin. Thank you so much. And I apologize for jumping in. I know my views are pretty well known about this, but I have a board meeting at 7, so I do not have the luxury of time this evening. I loved the presentation, and I know people will be surprised to hear me say I don't mind the concept of an enlarged plaza, so long as we're still able to serve our visitors and our business owners. So, you know, I thought a lot about what Ian said the other night about the importance of better managing the logistics for our business owners who use these 4 parking lots. I love the idea of enhanced circulation. I love the idea of a greenway. A couple of things I'd like to see. One is solar. So many parking lots generate power and income with solar. And I know that solar is an investment up front to install, but it can be installed in such a way as to provide shade and to provide service. And similarly, I'd love to see EV charging stations to encourage the use of electric vehicles. I think the preservation of bicycle parking is super important, but we have to balance bicycle parking with the enjoyment of the residents with the vehicle traffic. So a lot of people don't remember, I know Peter will remember, but a lot of people don't remember back in the 80s, we didn't have a bicycle problem, we had a vehicle problem. We were just overwhelmed every weekend with vehicles to where residents had a hard time making their way downtown to enjoy the downtown. Wayfinding is important when you get off the ferry to be able to find your way. I love that the kiosk is down there. I'd love to see the kiosk and the Chamber of Commerce remain centrally located and have the ability to share with our visitors what businesses and amenities we have to offer. And I love the idea of artwork. You know, we used to have an arts commission. It's now part of our park and rec department, but having artwork, you know, our artists are some of our most unique and treasured resources. So I would love to see an accommodation or an ability to, even on a rotating basis or something, to include artwork. But the other final thing I'll say is I would like to see whatever we do be amenable to enhanced amenities down the road. So this might be a first step, but it should not prohibit our ability to perform future improvements if we're able to identify additional funding. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joan. Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Next on my list is Peter Van Meter. Peter, I'm going to, let's see, ask you to lower your hand and you're ready to go.
All right, thank you. Yeah, this is a great presentation. Thank you for hosting this forum tonight. It's a great job done by the Architects Committee. Congratulations to them. It's really been fantastic. I am totally in favor of proceeding ahead with this option 1 design. If you want comment on option 2 now, I'll say that I think that path to V of A is something that can be added later if we know what the V of A use is. So option 1 is where I would go right now. You asked a question about pavement. The deteriorated form of the pavement is so horrible right now. I would take the more aggressive approach to fixing the pavement in the lot. A surface slurry coat will not be adequate based on how broken up it is. Also, as you implement this phase one, make the infrastructure compatible with the ultimate vision so you don't have to do redos later. Now, regarding the plan in itself, I think that the plaza within the 5% rule under 1128, pending that vote coming up, would allow the slight increase in the size of the plaza. I would suggest maybe starting that radius where the lot turns near the yacht club to be a little bit closer to where the existing ticket kiosks are. That would add a few feet away and increase the size of that plaza. Regarding landscaping, I'm kind of mixed feelings about having actual trees in the plaza itself. I like the feel of a wide open space like you often see in Europe central plazas that gives you really the feeling of open space where the views are unobstructed, because that's really what we have here. Regarding the dining on El Portal, I have given input to the architects group previously. I'll say it here again, public. I think the restaurants and services in that area can in fact tolerate very well having the dining seating next to the park across the street, because that's going to be extremely lightly traveled driveway basically to in above the tide and for some deliveries. And if the seating is over next to the park, it's going to be in the sun much more often than if it's just up against the shade of those buildings. So I would propose that detail change. As you know, I've been working on this thing for the last 15 years. I'm so excited about it finally moving ahead. And those would be my comments on this phase. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Great to see you as well. Next on my list is Aaron Roller. Aaron, are you there?
Hello. Hey, Kevin, can you hear me okay?
You're doing great.
Okay, cool. Thanks for taking my comments and thanks for the presentation. First of all, I just wanted to say that the drop-off is great. I think it's great a concept to get the cars through. A little bit to have them go through the parking lot like that, I think is no one will use it. Having a lot of familiarity with school drop-off, the flow right now will send them through the parking lot. It's kind of long and actually crosses a lot of pathways that people would be walking along. So I think that that's something to be concerned about from a circulation perspective. Also, I think it's an opportunity to make the walkways bigger. Item number 2 on the map you had is a sidewalk that leads to the towards the park there, and the jazz and blues, for example. And it's just really narrow. It's super narrow, and that's an opportunity to widen that, and I think consume some of that pathway that we have for the cars if you could reduce that. So those are kind of some details. Also, consume Tracy Way. By all means, close it. It's a problem. I'd be happy if it never opened again because of the way cars exit out. It's actually extremely dangerous for the just for entering back onto Bridgeway and the crosswalk at B of A there. So that's great. Great way to reuse it as well. Other thing I wanted to mention, queuing. I think that's a major problem. Actually, when you look at photos that people have of complaining about the ferry, which by the way gets very low ratings because they are waiting in line and they don't know which ferry they're getting on. For example, if they have a bike, they may not know. So they have to wait in line. When they're waiting in line, they're not buying stuff from our businesses because they're worried about getting on the next ferry. So just using a simple boarding pass system, something like Southwest has, that says, hey, you've got this pass, you're going to get on this ferry. Something like that would, and I realize that may be something that we have to manage. It may not be something that the ferry would be managing, but it can really help actually identify too what people are waiting for, because there are different companies that are queuing up. So I think that's an opportunity to reduce the amount of space of just people massing around there, because that can be a very unpleasant experience walking by as a local and just trying to get through that mess there. And then they can be out spending money at our businesses, and I think that's a good opportunity. Overall, I think that this is fine. It saddens me a little bit to hear how expensive it's going to be to pave the parking lot when it should be for pedestrians and bicyclists. So I ask us to kind of review that. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate you being on the call today. Mr. Matt Smith, I haven't met you, but thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, hi, great to meet you, Kevin. Thank you. So my wife Kirsten's away at a school board meeting, so she's not here. I have a 2-year-old and a 6-year-old, so they might jump in at any time. So apologies in advance if they jump in. I just wanted to call in and provide % support for the project. I believe this is going to significantly help the community, and knowing the design team, or at least Michael Rex and a few of the others, I am fully confident it's going to be an amazing proposal. I lost track of the 4 questions that were up. I got the first 2 before I couldn't write them down anymore. But on the second, I believe it had to do with landscaping and benches, etc. Fully in favor of that. I think that's a great idea. I also think, as we're talking about artwork and murals, something that I think might be very interesting, and I don't know if anybody's familiar with the work of Conrad Albruzio over in New Orleans, who did basically a 400-year history, very realistic, somewhat macabre, but it was a very honest sort of assessment of the history of the area. And I think maybe that might be very useful to have from the Marin ship all the way to, the World War II and all the sort of changes, houseboat wars, et cetera, a very honest assessment of the history, inclusive of both sort of Marin City and Sausalito. I think that might be kind of nice. I think that really might be a nice historical perspective. And I don't know what that looks like. I'm not an artist, but I was just looking back on some artwork from New Orleans, thinking, oh, wouldn't that be nice to have that here, to have sort of a pictorial representation of the history of the area. So with that, I offer my support fully for the project, and I'll just offer that. Thank you again for the time.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Matt. Just to remind everybody on the call too, you're always welcome to give me an email or contact me through the city's website. And feel free to let me know your thoughts if you can't join this meeting or would like to reach out in some other way. So next on my list is Kevin Carroll. Kevin, are you ready? I'm gonna ask you to unmute and lower your hand. Kevin, are you with us? There you are.
Yes, I am. And I assume you're hearing me.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Sausalito taxis, so you know where I'm coming from. Just a couple of notes and looking at it. I'm not so sure about the drop-off, the 5-place drop-off so close to the terminal. If that shouldn't be restricted maybe to handicapped only. My concern, one, I assume taxis will not be in the parking lot at all, the way it currently is, where we're outside of that area completely, because we take a lot of room up and we take a lot of time loading and unloading bicycles if we're bike carriers. 2, I would want to restrict Uber and Lyft from picking up and dropping off inside the parking lot. It'd be much safer if they were over on Anchor Way, because keep in mind, they're constantly looking at their phones while they're driving. And that's not a good mixture with driving through a parking lot and pedestrians and bicycles. Either they're looking at their phone to find their fare or they're looking for their next call. So I don't know if, I think it would be more appropriate for locals maybe to pick up and drop off on El Portal rather than inside the parking lot, which is what people do essentially now. And there's always the possibility, as far as turning El Portal into a dining area, that'll be great if another restaurant moves into Cafe Tutti, but I don't think there's any guarantee that'll necessarily happen, in which case an eating area would be used by people from the restaurants on Bridgeway walking with food down the street and across Bridgeway, which it's already a little hectic as it is. I don't know if that really wants to be encouraged. And the last comment I'd like to make is it's not applying to this concept, so I'll hold that for later. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Good to see you. Next on our list is David Sutto. David, I just asked you to unmute and lower your hand. David, are you with us? There you are.
Yes. Hi. So I really like Joan's comments, and I would just incorporate a lot of what she just said into my comments. I like the idea of solar, and maybe we could create a covered waiting area somewhere on the periphery of the parking lot that would have a solar roof. Might be another idea to expand on that. The other thing I think might be important is secure bicycle parking, whether that's lockers or an attended or locked corral. Something else that the Chamber of Commerce could help with, along with the kiosk, perhaps, so that we can get Sausalito and Mill Valley commuters out of their cars and riding e-bikes to the ferry, which they have a hard time doing something with once they get to the ferry because of prohibitions of e-bikes on the ferry. But e-bikes would be great for sunny days or non-rainy days, when that parking in that lot could be used for tourists and day trippers instead, so that it has a really benefit besides just just providing an amenity for bikers. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thank you for joining us this evening. Warren Wells, you are next on our list. Warren, good to see you.
Thanks, Kevin. This is Warren Wells, Policy and Plan Director for the Marin County Bicycle Coalition. So I just want to say we're very supportive of increasing the size of the plaza at the very Landside, and I just want to touch on a few items in particular. So space comes at a premium in the Bay Area, and Sausalito is no exception. And so we only have so much space, and we want to figure out how best to allocate it. So each car parking stall takes about 400 square feet when considering the space it takes to park the car and the drive aisles. If that space is turned into a plaza or a park, that same amount of area could easily host like an outdoor party or several tables, for at least a dozen people. If used for bicycle parking, that same amount of space, it was just is one car, could easily serve for parking for a couple dozen bicycles or a dozen e-bikes. So what should we be doing? How best does 400 square feet of space serve its businesses and the people? The way to solve traffic, which we know is increasing every year, is to give people other options. So electric cars are fantastic and they're an important part of our climate strategy, but they're not any smaller than the normal cars, so the traffic problem doesn't go away. And in 2020, twice as many e-bikes were sold in America as electric cars, fully twice, 2 to 1. And even though electric cars are subsidized and e-bikes are not, people are voting with their wallets, and we should be facilitating travel to and from the ferry that's quiet, zero greenhouse gas emissions, space efficient, and safer for people, busy tourist areas like downtown. As David Sutto mentioned, the way we do that is to provide secure bike parking at the ferry terminal. So people currently can't take their bikes on the ferry. That might change, but not everyone wants to, and certainly no one wants to lock up expensive e-bike out for the whole day. And lastly, we strongly encourage, MCBC strongly encourages incorporating the recommendations, the recommended north-south greenway as described in the Ferry Gate 6 feasibility study. Sausalito is in a unique position of serving as the southern gateway to Marin, and we should extend that to people choosing to travel through the county via bike or by foot. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this whole project and really appreciate all the work you're doing. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Warren. Good to hear from you. Next on our list is Miss Sandra Bushmaker. Sandra, if you're ready to go ahead and talk.
Good evening, everybody. I'm going to reserve my comments on the design for later as this gets more developed. I just want to make a couple general comments. I would suggest that the group, if they haven't done already, research what is under parking lot 1. It is clearly defined in moments in time, and I know there's a landfill in this swampy area that was created by the railroad when the lagoon was closed off. So I would suggest that be researched, and certainly I'm opposed to any digging in parking lot 1 because of what's buried underneath there. Secondly, I think we need to do a deep dive on the legal limitations of what we do with our parking within our city ordinances as it presently exists. And lastly, I would like to encourage the group to consult with the businesses, the hotels, and the city tenants that use the parking lot 1 and get their input and get their feedback as to the impact of these changes, whether they are for or against them, and what actions would be taken that would impact, particularly the tenants, impact their tenants' rights and their leases with the city. So with the rest of the comments, I'll reserve that for later. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. All right, we still have a few more hands raised, but I'm just to kind of comment on some of Sandra's comments there is, I know that the local architects group has done a lot of effort to go reach out to businesses, and especially Michael Rex and everybody else in the group. But let's see, our next speaker is Yasmin Mcgrain. Yasmin, are you ready to go ahead and provide us some comments? Great to see you.
Yeah. Hi, Kevin, how are you?
Good.
Well, I really appreciate being here, and I appreciate everybody's comments. A lot of things that people said really resonated with me. In particular, I think just at a kind of helicopter up level, I think it's such an opportunity since we have this unique ferry landing in our backyard is to really lead on the environmental front as a community, as well as racial justice and equity. So I really love the comments about solar, about e-bikes, about green spaces. I mean, I can just visualize what could happen there and really be a story that we tell for generations to come, how we didn't just add e-bikes, but like we really strategically thought about how we want a ferry terminal to kind of lead on the environmental front. So think innovative, I guess, is the point. And also saying, you know, we have the opportunity being 94965 with Marin City and Sausalito of how a community comes together. So I love the idea, someone, I forgot his name right now, but mentioned about a historical mural. I think that's a wonderful way for everybody to feel welcome, to spend time, kind of slow their life down, to kind of really appreciate the history that is within 94965 and sort of bring it to life in this one spot. So I would love this to be a really green community hub, that people don't just use it as, okay, a spot to get on the ferry and go, but to kind of enjoy and connect and celebrate our history here in Sausalito, Marin City. So thank you for all everybody's doing to make this happen.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. We appreciate it. Our next member of the public is Willie. Willie, I'm going to ask you to unmute and lower your hand. Just if you could tell us your name, Willie.
Willie McDevitt. I'm from Petaluma and a property owner on El Portal.
Thanks, Willie.
I want to respond to a couple of things that have been said regarding Warren and bikes. You know, I ride my bike from Petaluma to go to Sausalito, but about 10 times I drive my car to the 2 times I ride my bike. So I'm totally supportive of creating more bike parking, including charging for electric bikes, which is going to become something that would be, I think, more prevalent over time. The other thing is to include some vehicle charging. You know, businesses and cities are becoming de facto fueling stations for the world now, and denying that, I think, is we're way past that. Sandra talked about outreach. Michael Rex and Jacques have done a fantastic job of outreach on multiple occasions to the businesses on El Portal, and they've listened carefully to input and responded to the input in a way that comes up with some great design and allows these businesses to function properly. You know, everybody says there's no traffic on El Portal, but there's no traffic on El Portal until you're on El Portal when there's a truck, a garbage truck, whatever else is happening there. But there's a lot of businesses with huge amounts of revenue on that street, and it's pretty important to the city. The issue about solar panels, great idea. It needs to be limited and not obstruct views. My main point, and this does not refer to our business, it refers to all the businesses in downtown Sausalito desperately need parking. You know, everybody says, yeah, I can ride my bike, and I do it. But when I ride my bike, I don't take anything home. And if you're visiting a retailer in Sausalito, you might buy something that's bigger than what you can carry on your bike. So parking is a critical component to the success of a stressed retail environment that's competing with the internet. So as much as there are ideas to drastically reduce or eliminate parking there, that could kill the goose that laid the golden egg, which is the businesses, restaurants, et cetera, in downtown. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDevitt. Good to see you. Our next speaker is Kieran Culligan. Kieran, are you there, sir?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm here, and I'm trying to take care of my two kids. So I'm just going to say that I'm really supportive of this effort. What I really like about all of this discussion here, it's like I'm not hearing kind of polar extremes of absolutely yes, under any circumstances, absolutely no. But we're talking about like what actually makes sense, and let's be thoughtful about it. Let's make sure we engage different constituencies. Let's make sure that we are being analytical. Let's think this through, and that's what I'm seeing. I'm really happy about it. I'm thankful for the design group for incorporating a lot of feedback from the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee. I see a lot of that in there, and I appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing what's ahead. So thanks.
Thanks, Kieran. Good to see you and the kids. At this point, I don't see any other hands raised. It looks like we're doing great, folks, because we are about 10 minutes ahead of schedule. So I'm going to move back to my quick presentation and introduce to the architects group, especially Bill Hines. So bear with me for 1 sec. All right. Hello. All right. Hopefully you can see my screen. I'm flipping through the slides again. All right. Now, thank you so much. For the last 6 months, the local architects group has been working on a long-term vision for this area. The scope of their vision generally looks at parking lot 1 through 4 and basically asks, what can we do with this area of town? Their specific area, obviously, has been concentrated on parking lot 1 because that's where we've needed their help the most. Currently, there are no additional funding sources for this work. In other words, expanding past parking lot 1 with the funding coming from the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transportation District. However, some improvements we've described earlier may be impacted by what is intended with the long-term vision. A concept of what if could be changed in this area of Sausalito came up early on when the architect just looked at lot 1. We've got things to consider such as the parking setting. What could happen here? Do we keep the parking? Do we have partial parking? Do we look at a park setting? There's all sorts of alternatives here, and these amazing folks have actually taken a lot of effort to look into it. Keep in mind that all of these parking lots 1 through 4 are generally connected. I've got some rough numbers up here. These are just approximate numbers of square footage. Like I said, they're all connected. With that, I'd like to introduce Bill Hines. He's going to take over the PowerPoint presentation at this point and kind of walk folks through some of their concepts. And when he's finished, I have some additional questions for the public. We'd love to get your input as well. So with that, I'll turn this over to Bill, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay.
Doing good.
Great. My name is Bill Hines. I'm an associate principal with SWA Group. We're a worldwide landscape architecture and planning firm. We're headquartered here in Sausalito. I've also been on the board of Sausalito Beautiful for many years, and I'm currently chair of design and leadership. It's been a real pleasure of mine working with fellow professionals on this kind of parking lot 1 and ferry landing site. This project initially got my interest several years ago, and we're excited to be at this point that engages all the various possibilities and stakeholders in a dialogue about the future of downtown. It's really full of opportunities for beautiful, high quality public spaces with verdant landscaping and a statement about this unique community. Here's a photo of our site, part of downtown that's 91% paved from El Portal to Johnson Street, which collectively represents 12 acres of mostly asphalt that's undifferentiated for pedestrian use. There are many conditions that can be improved and represent opportunities. The Ferry Landing Plaza, this is an ideal view, and it should feature a waterfront promenade and a real imageable space. Here's another view. You can see it's obviously obscured by the temporary sort of measures that have been put in place. And we look forward to getting a coordinated design to the Ferry Plaza. The Bridgeway, Anchor, and Tracy Way intersection is one of the widest crosswalks and crossings in town, and could really represent a sense of arrival for the city of Sausalito and arrival to this project and downtown. There's a possibility of doing what's currently done in 4 crossings of Bridgeway and the various intersections could be done in 2. There's also the connection to the waterfront promenade and Gabrielson Park. And as you can see, although there's a physical connection here, there really isn't a visual connection with Gabrielson Park. And the car parking is obscuring part of that. But when you get past it, Gabrielson Park is a pretty nice park. So we think that this is an aspect of the design that can definitely be improved and accentuated while also providing more space for circulation. And then there's El Portal. It's a pretty widely paved street for what it really encompasses. There's certainly the possibility of expanding the sidewalk and increasing dining opportunities on the street and constraining circulation to only the necessary traffic that needs to use El Portal. And then here's a photo of Tracy Way, obviously a large extent of bike parking or asphalt that's being used currently as bike parking. I think the sort of thought here is that we could find a better way to formalize this bike parking if this really is the effort moving forward here. So in terms of, kind of working with our local professional group, we got started studying this and got a little wind in our sails when the city council decided to hire SWA to help facilitate this visioning exercise. And I think the goal of our local professionals group is really to make sure that BKF engineers inherited the best possible plan to implement, and that it was coordinated with a future vision to the extent that that was possible. We wanted to make sure that the interim improvements could be made to the plan since the budget's tight, and that future phases of the project could happen when funding is available. And I think I'll just mention that repedestrianizing downtowns is an important trend in landscape architecture and is really one of taking back the public realm from cars. And Paris is implementing a very aggressive program of expanding the pedestrian realm sort of on that basis. So we've produced a few kind of quick diagrams here just to kind of show you how this concept would play out. Obviously, one of the most revered green spaces downtown is Vina Del Mar Park. And together with Gabrielson, they're kind of the green hubs and probably represent, maybe 7.5 or 8% of the 9% of green area and green space downtown. There's the existing kind of waterfront promenade which heads up to Spinnaker and is sort of the natural connection at the ferry landing, which is sort of the midpoint between that and El Portal, which returns you back to Bridgeway. So there's a possibility of connecting all these spaces with this expanded ferry landing project. And you know, this is kind of the extent loosely of the interim plan, expanding this ferry landing plaza and sort of making this connection here. We've seen, you know, through our studies and discussions about what the possibilities are for this parking lot 1, that there is potential to expand this area. And we think an important element, whether or not the expansion of the parking lot happens, is this gateway plaza at the intersection of Bridgeway, Anchor, and currently Tracy Way that I described earlier. And potentially, if lot 1 gets incorporated into that idea, there are ways of facilitating circulation between all these elements and actually setting up the North-South Greenway, which could happen along Humboldt or potentially ultimately along Bridgeway. So that's kind of an overview of, at a high level, of how we're looking at this plaza project. And so from that, we developed some basic principles of design that I'll kind of quickly outline here that sort of played into our thinking that we've incorporated into the project so far. Waterfront views and maximizing views of the bay is a paramount consideration. Making a visual and physical connection to Gabrielson Park and the Spinnaker Peninsula is important, along with the connection to El Portal. The focus should really be on pedestrian and bike improvements, expanding the existing footprint for a better pedestrian circulation. And we should really avoid repaving or restriping the parking lot, even though the condition is poor, especially given you know, this discussion and the fact that we, you know, aren't ultimately sure what we want to do with the parking lot. And actually the parking lot requires a pretty significant investment to keep it in parking. And, you know, I think the business case for that should be looked at a little bit further if repaving the parking lot is, you know, sort of a favored idea. There should be a sense of arrival in the plaza with wayfinding and distinct experiences and an opportunity to diffuse in the space and have a few choices. There should be a starting point for future circulation routes along the waterfront and the North-South Greenway. The access to the hotels, the drop-off and service on El Portal shall remain, but the street shouldn't be open to everyone to use, and expanding the Sidewalk Cafe adjacent to those businesses in a shared street bordering Vina Del Mar would be a great use of that space. We feel that, you know, all the entities that currently lease spots from the city, such as hotels, need to be maintained. Those relationships are very important and a key element of those businesses continuing to do their business. In some of our preliminary explorations, it would seem that parking revenue can be kept constant through a better program for pricing, and loss of spaces can be made up by use of privately controlled city lots, potentially valet parking, and some other ideas there. And if well designed, a significant reduction in parking may actually increase the activity and commerce with a better sense of place. Trees and landscaping, I think for parking lot 1 needs to be considered in concert with the parking, the paving surface. You know, at the point that you need to replace the trees, you're doing damage to pavement to do that work. So they kind of come part and parcel of one another. And that's part of our advice, to really just keep the current trees and paving to the extent possible until they're superseded by another idea. And, you know, the design for the pedestrian and bike enhancements is, you know, certainly constrained by Ordinance 1128, and having a little bit more freedom there would definitely improve our design. And I think even the interim plan plus the pedestrian improvements that was shown earlier, you know, kind of teeters on the brink of the 5%. And so for that reason, it's really important that, you know, we take another look at 1128 and and change the language there to provide more flexibility. As Kevin mentioned, we've reached out to several stakeholder groups. I haven't been involved in the stakeholder discussions as directly as Jacques and Michael, who have been talking with folks directly. We've been reaching out to the hotels, the retail, the dining, the buses and transit, bike riders, renters, pedestrians. And I think an important stakeholder as the project develops is going to be the operator of the former B of A building and what that program involves. So we have a couple schemes that we've developed for your consideration here. And I'm going to quickly characterize these, and I'll just kind of run through a summary. I've got a couple diagrams to go along with those. And then maybe we can, sort of discuss these collectively at the end. I've got a few more slides here. So this first scheme, scheme one, as we're calling it, responds to this need to keep some convenient parking in current lot one. This could be seen, as sort of a strategy of reducing parking over time. But essentially from an urban design standpoint, the parking that we're looking to keep here is situated in a way that it, kind of bifurcates Gabrielson Park from a potential, plaza or park space in parking lot one. But because we need to facilitate the access to the Sausalito Yacht Club, we actually, don't think that this is, necessarily a negative, and, may in fact represent some opportunities. So what you're looking at in this figure is the, kind of bike parking areas are shown in green, thinking that there could potentially be, during bigger events, a bike valet in lot two, if in fact parking lot one is reduced in a fashion such as this. The drop off for the ferry landing would happen down Humboldt at sort of a turnaround. Bus drop off could happen along Anchor and Bridgeway and Bay Street as it currently does today. We show buses on the opposite side from Bay as they currently are, currently reside in front of the Ice House. And the kind of bank of bike parking against Gabrielson is sort of ideally situated along kind of a natural circulation route for bikes. So sort of thinking that, this may be a bike parking area that's attended to when demand sort of needs it, or it could just be, kind of a typical bike parking area, self-park type environment, when that sort of service is not needed. And thinking potentially, that there's a need for some smaller kind of bike parking clusters just for convenience bike parking downtown. This would be maybe more for locals as opposed to tourists. Along Humboldt, we're looking at keeping probably about 70 parking spaces along there. Right now, as you know, this is a zone of bus parking and staging. Trying to sort of facilitate the bus staging along the edges of the existing streets and around the kind of parking lot two, former B of A block to the extent possible. So without getting into too much detail about the plaza or a park or exactly what happens in this program, this is sort of how we're seeing the surrounding urban design elements. And, as I mentioned, that there are some variables in this scheme, based on the need for parking, bike parking, drop off, and access to the ferry. So we actually took a look at another alternative here, which, might be something that sort of functions in a special event, thinking that there might be a zone of, paving here that could potentially be, bollarded or closed off and still leave some access for the yacht club when a special event needs to happen. Now, the special event area this could be, you know, ultimately a bike valet area. This could be a potential venue for farmers market or pop-up booths, you know, food trucks certainly. So the idea is that by providing some bollards here, we can close this area off and make it flexible. And by doing so, make it a little bit more porous to people if we don't have kind of constant vehicle circulation. In a scenario like that, of course, the, you know, kind of close and convenient drop off to the ferry landing would need a temporary staging location, and thinking that that can happen along Bridgeway and that the drop off movement would be through here. You know, it's sort of interesting to note that the distance of walking from the ferry landing, you know, from the ferry boat to the ferry landing is really about the same as walking from the ferry landing to the B of A. And I think I'll add that most people, you know, if they're going to San Francisco, usually have a little bit of a walk on the other end. So I sort of feel like asking, you know, people to walk a little bit farther in a scenario like this is not totally unrealistic. But, you know, the reason that we're showing these plans and thoughts to you now is to get your input. So under the scenario, there'd still be a bank of kind of convenience parking here on Humboldt, which actually doesn't exist today currently. So these are sort of new spaces. We are able to keep the existing spaces in Lot 2. The green area that's designated as bike parking could also function just as regular car parking. So that basically all of Lot 2 and the parking along Humboldt could stay intact. And, you know, we can talk about people's preference for you sort of bus drop off, whether that's, you know, better to happen on one side of the street versus the other. If one side's cars, car parking versus bike parking. So we have another scenario that we've taken a look at. This is the scenario that really just facilitates vehicular access that needs to happen for the parking and deliveries for the yacht club. And, you know, really looks at kind of formalizing this more as a kind of plaza park environment, really endeavors to keep vehicles out of this zone aside from the access to the yacht club parking, and sort of takes another look at Anchor and whether you know, it's sort of fully necessary. And it sort of does that by looking at kind of keeping the existing bus staging that we have along Bridgeway, makes an entrance into parking lot 2 so that there's actually a drive-through for the buses, and the fact that there could in fact be some bus drop-off back behind the B of A, and that the parking that's there you know, could also function as some valet bike parking on sort of an as needed basis. So feeling that this, together with the buses and the bike circulation, you know, is sort of a centralized hub of transit, especially if you're not driving a single occupancy vehicle. In this scenario, we envision Anchor, and, you know, Anchor is getting closed off and Tracy's getting closed off by the Gateway Plaza. We envision Anchor as a one-way street that would bring you through and could bring you out, you know, through Bay Street to sort of loop around the block. So the idea here is that you could come in, drop people off for the ferry landing, and they could walk out in that direction through the plaza or park space. The other, you know, kind of ideas about bike parking are pretty similar. You know, a fairly dense area of bike parking on the backside of Gabrielson Park. Some potentially small groups of racks here along the sidewalk, along the back of Vina Del Mar. Again, just providing a place for more locals to stash their bikes. We took a look at an event type scenario in this because one of the things that sort of intrigued us in looking at the downtown design and sort of the big picture was, is Anchor Street really necessary And in closing Anchor Street, does that represent potentially some kind of opportunity to make the connection to the plaza or park space better than it currently is, and even better potentially than we've seen in some of the different alternatives that we've been looking at. So the idea here is that we could have some temporary bollards that could be installed potentially during special events or certain times of the year that would basically say that Anchor could be closed off. We would still be able to provide access to the yacht club and their parking. But, kind of the idea with Anchor being closed is that you facilitate this pedestrian connection across here. And again, this could be something that could happen on an as needed basis. So the idea is that when Anchor's closed, people could be dropped off to the ferry landing right on Bridgeway. And this Bridgeway streetscape has been expanded quite a bit to reduce the length of crossing. There could certainly be a bulb out or other ideas in terms of being able to pull in for a drop off, similar to like we have here. But basically all this is available for drop off. In this scenario, there's the possibility of consolidating some of the buses around Bay Street. And buses in terms of circulation can come around here and sort of do the queuing. They're able to come in and sort of loop around and come out this way. So it sort of feels like this is all fairly accessible and serviceable. And I think under this scenario, there may even be some special events that would dictate the use of the kind of shared street and access to the yacht club as a possibility. So, what we really wanted to do with these schemes is give you an idea to look at that keeps some parking here, which feels like it doesn't get in the way between a bigger gesture here and Gabrielson Park, and still allows us to create this unification, sort of idea from Bridgeway all the way out to the waterfront. And then also with these alternative schemes, look at providing some flexibility ultimately so that it's not necessarily an or, either or type solution. It could be an and or, and that these, kind of ideas could be used in tandem to provide the right kind of scale of space for the amount of activity, the given events, the amount of bike traffic, and that sort of thing. And there's kind of a saying in design, I don't know if you've heard it, but it's basically that you don't want to design the church for Easter Sunday. And so a lot of what we're doing with these flexible schemes is looking at using the same piece of pavement, for instance, as, potentially it could be bike parking or, could be car parking under a certain situation. But that we really shouldn't be thinking about pavement for only one use. We have a few of these, key moments that, we've tried to capture with a couple renderings. This view is obviously down by the water, kind of looking out from the El Portal intersection. And I think if we go back to, some of the previous views, you recall that, everything is kind of encumbered by some of the temporary guardrails and signage and other, kind of wayfinding elements that are in the courtyard now. We really envision this as more of an open plaza. Would certainly have some planting and, certainly nice seating that would allow for a certain amount of activity at this end of the plaza. And, a lot of this is not really cooked in to the current scheme. It's compounded by the fact that, circulation is bifurcated by the hedges, guardrails, and temporary fencing that's put up. And so this is sort of the idea, that we're trying to espouse for the Ferry Landing Plaza. We haven't really done, any full renderings of the parking lot one, assuming that it's, going to remain a parking lot or potentially transform into a plaza, because, you know, we really wanted to reach out to you, the public, and sort of hear, you know, opinions and thoughts on what you think should happen there. We have done another rendering here. This is that El Portal, or I'm sorry, the Tracy Way, Bridgeway, and Anchor intersection. And this is the idea about closing off this piece and sort of the end of Vina Del Mar and capturing it as this gateway plaza. There's the possibility of even setting up a visual access to the ferry and, you know, sort of having this long view across a flexible use space that could accommodate a bunch of different events potentially. So, you know, I think we've talked about a number of ideas for this plaza and you know, this area. The kind of big idea here, and I think I'm going to go back to the diagram here. The pedestrian and bike ideas that we've sort of shown in these design studies are really just refinements of existing use patterns that we've observed on the site, and really just trying to provide ample space for these, you know, different uses. There have been, you know, quite a few debates in our working group about, you know, the amount of plaza versus softscape. The discussion of maybe how to situate some outdoor rooms and gathering areas with furniture. Thoughts about, you know, is there some topography, mounds, or a hill? Are there event spaces, and are they different sizes, and what sort of events do they want to accommodate? How does this bike circulation and bike parking work? How should we think about planting trees? And, you know, one potential thought is that, you know, trees could happen in elevated planters so that they're less vulnerable to sea level rise and a rising water table. But certainly the expression of sea level rise response should be something that's espoused in this plaza. It may be an idea about fortification of the shoreline edge, and it may be an idea about, in fact, doing less and allowing this area to facilitate the outflows of drainage should a, you know, certain storm event happen. There are debates about, you know, how many cars versus bikes versus buses we should accommodate. Some discussion about pop-up structures, you know, vendor booths, artist booths, discussion of food trucks, what the Instagrammable moments are, along with these ideas of outdoor rooms and gathering areas with furniture. Are there elements such as fire pits or water elements that kind of continue to draw people in?
Bill, we should probably move this along so that we can get some public input on some of your amazing drawings and concepts.
Well, thanks, Kevin. So I think pending the public input, and I'm pretty much finished. So that was a great timing there. You know, our goal is, you know, really to prepare a final series of recommendations with the kind of input that we received today. And we're hoping that we could really tee up something incredible for the city of Sausalito, and, you know, think that projects like this are going to be, you know, quite appealing in terms of some of this federal stimulus money that we're, you know, thinking is going to be cut loose here soon. So all the details on that are emerging, but with that, I'm going to close my mouth, and I'm available for questions. And definitely let me know if there's a particular slide that you want to look at.
Can I make one comment?
Definitely.
We have done outreach to the merchants, the downtown people, but not that much to the citizens. And I hope that in the commentary that the local residents can give us some clues as to the things they would like to see down there that will draw them in. Because to me, one of the big needs that we have downtown is to get more residents downtown. I see so few of my friends downtown now when I go on my walks. And so, you know, this plaza may have to have some other things that will draw the local residents. And as Mr. McDermott pointed out, yes, you can get food along Bridgeway, but it would be kind of awkward to bring it there. So, you know, maybe there are some food cafe things that need to happen in the plaza. I'd just like to see what some of the residents think about that.
Great comment, Jacques.
So Bill, if you could stop sharing your screen, we could move on to obtaining public comment. Great. So I'm going to share my screen ever so shortly here. All right. So folks, as we take public comment, and I don't think I have to read the paragraph again that we've talked about if you need to dial in at *9, but consider these couple questions. What type of changes should we be considering in the parking lots of downtown? Also, you know, should we be considering a ballot measure that allows a park or a different setting in this downtown area? I think Bill mentioned it and I did about Ordinance 1128. Should we pursue changing that ever so slightly to allow park setting or other amenities? And then Bill had mentioned a bunch of amenities too. I'm not too sure I have to run through them all again. So why don't we just move on quickly to public participation. And I do see some hands raised already, which is fabulous. So I'll call on you one at a time. And Yasmin Mcgrain, you're first again on the top of my list.
Okay, thank you, Kevin. Well, Jacques, when you made your comment, I had to raise my hand because it's like you were asking the question that I've been wanting to speak about. I didn't mention last time, but our family is a 20-year resident here in Old Town Sausalito at 4th and Richardson. And we have 2 children, 12 and 14. I'm also on the school board here in Sausalito, Marin City, and Sausalito Beautiful as well. So the reason I mention that is because, to your point, Jacques, there's a huge yearning, I think, across our community to really enjoy our downtown more. And it's not that people don't want the tourists, all the wonderful tourists to come, but it just needs to have a calling, like to have us come and really stay and enjoy, not just pass through the downtown. And I think it's because, to Bill's design, which I love Scheme 2, the alternative one, because I think it's so choppy the way it's been designed that you never really, it doesn't pull you into the space for things like food trucks and farmers markets and picnics where we would bring our kids and hang out. And I think it would actually bring us a lot to supporting more of our local merchants that are down there. Right now, we think of them as a block sometimes. It's like, oh, they're just serving the tourists. But there's really so many wonderful restaurants and boutiques and things that I'm always even surprised when I find something new, because I don't spend enough time staying there, kind of like grounding myself in that space. And I think a lot of it is the way the design is laid out. So I think having more, that's why Scheme 2, the alternative, where you still have a better flow of the buses and the parking, but there's more green spaces. There's more opportunity for pop-up events and artisans to come down and picnics and food trucks. I think those kind of things will pull the community into that space to fully enjoy it. And I like what Bill said, that we need to think about not as, will that take away revenue? I think it will add revenue. I think there's a lot of opportunities where we can still increase our parking revenue, but actually add more opportunity for our downtown merchants to thrive. I was a 10-year local merchant, so I know how important revenue is, but I think getting the support from the local community will actually help them more. And the last point I wanted to make is, I do agree that tourists, having them park a little bit further will not hurt them coming to downtown. They walk all across and explore that downtown, that a few extra feet or, you know, however it is, I don't think that's gonna be a negative for tourists. I think they'll actually get to enjoy that space more and probably come more often when they come to visit to Sausalito. So thank you, Jacques, for your question.
Thank you, Yasmin. Appreciate the help. Next on my list is Jeremy Christensen. Jeremy, are you ready?
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm here. Let me unraise my, oh, I already unraised my hand. Well, Jacques, Bill, and Michael, thank you so much for the work you've done on this. It's really great. I'm a relatively new resident of Sausalito. I moved here about 3 years ago. And, you know, the first thing I noticed just as I got more, you know, familiar with the space is just how difficult downtown is. And I really do attribute that to the amount of parking. It's everywhere. And it's really difficult to do anything there. And I feel like, you know, walking around downtown, watching people visit, they're kind of bewildered as what to do as well. There's nothing to do. It's all parking. And I do think that that is a lot of what has been difficult for the businesses, because I think you don't have an amenity that draws people to the location other than the beautiful bay views and whatnot. And you have this opportunity to do so much. So again, I really appreciate everything Bill, Jacques, you and Michael have done. I don't have anything particular in terms of schemes to support. I do think that this ballot initiative to remove this ridiculous parking requirement is necessary. I think a ballot initiative to, if it's combined or whatever, to allow for a park is great. I mean, that's one of the big things that I think is missing here. Gabrielson's great, but it's not very large, and there's so many central city events that occur there. There needs to be more space. The only thing I'd say, and I'm sure you guys looked into, is I don't totally understand why there isn't more focus on the large, underutilized paved area between the Spinnaker and the Bank of America building. I know the city owns quite a bit of that. They don't own all of it, but I think there needs to be an effort by the city to start to kind of figure out how to consolidate the city-owned property there, so to make better use of it. I know that I know the yacht club owns some land there, and there's a kind of boat works area, and it's very cut up and difficult to organize. So I think if there was an effort made to try to redraw some property lines and get a better utilization of space there, it might help for other plans in the future. And that's the end of my commentary.
Thanks, Jeremy. Great comments. Appreciate the help. Next on the list, Mr. Aaron Roller. Aaron?
Oh, here we go. Hey, Kevin and everyone again. Wow, Bill, thank you for the presentation, and to the group, to the working group, for all the vision you guys put in. I mean, that's what we've been waiting for, you know, to see a downtown that is catering to, I think, the youth. That, you know, we're looking at the pedestrian walkway there is really key. Even at times I've been like, oh, let's just send the greenway right by the ferry. But what we've got here is actually, you know, a walkway that's going to be catering to the pedestrians as we walk through town, and we want to get to our waterfront walkway. And I think that's really key. And what we've got is now a very relaxing, enjoyable way to do that. Meanwhile, it's been very thoughtful about how to get the existing circulation of bicycles, cars to the places they need to get, including the drop off and the bus drop off, and even some of the taxi pickup and that kind of thing. And I think that that's really key, because it's reducing that amount of conflict, and that's just going to make the entire experience more enjoyable, and more people are going to choose to walk and bike because they're going to be going down there. It's going to feel less threatening to be going through that area, which is extremely threatening now for anybody walking through or biking through that area. And so, but mostly it's actually going to give me and us residents a reason to come down there, because yeah, you know, we avoid it. Maybe I'll still avoid it in the height of the tourist season, you know, because it's like, hey, I just can't wait in line for that ice cream cone or whatever. But, you know, for the rest of the year, when it's not inundated, we have a place and a reason to go down there. And I think we will have a reason to see our friends that we don't currently see down there. And that is what I think the vision that you've laid out is showing. And I do think, you know, that the reduction in parking will actually bring more people. I mean, I think they're going to have to be upping the number of ferries, because during those events that we're going to be able to have there, and not just in that tiny little spot where we have jazz and blues right now. We'll have big events. We'll have more, people to serve, and the number of ferries will come in to serve those bigger events, and probably just also to get more people here, because they will be, when they arrive, they'll be like, wow, that was a feeling. Right now they arrive and they're like, that's a parking lot. So please keep up the vision. I'm enthusiastically in support of this, and whatever I can do to help you, just give me a call. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate the help. Warren?
Thanks, Aaron. I might add just one comment there. We would sort of hope that more people would take the ferry because of this potential project. I would expect it to be a boon for ferry use, potentially.
Sounds good. Warren Wells, you're next on the list here.
Thanks, Kevin, and thanks, Bill. I love this presentation. I really just want to back up everything Aaron said and other folks have said. It shows real vision and looks like the world we want to live in. I don't have any particular comments to make. I think both the schemes look really exciting, and there's I'm sure there's been a lot of iterations still to go. And I do appreciate that concerning pedestrian and bicycle circulation, you're trying to model things on how people are already traveling in the space. Going back to Yasmin's comment about how far people are willing to walk, think about how far people have to walk if they go to the Northgate Mall and walk through a giant parking lot and then go to the mall, have to go to the mall to where they're going. If people are comfortable in the space they're walking and are excited about their destination, they're willing to walk a little farther. And so just last, speaking on behalf of MCBC, to Kevin's question, we do support amending Ordinance 1198. I know that, that change is always hard and uncomfortable, but I would say to anyone concerned about, this change or things being different, I'd ask you to imagine, if you walk downtown tomorrow and this vision that Bill showed us was already just complete, how many people in Sausalito would want to pave the plaza and make it back into a parking lot? So, touching on the comments several people already made, let's make this place a reason people want to come downtown. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Warren. Next on the list is Peter Van Meter. Peter, I'm going to lower your hand. There you go. Hold on, you're muted. Is that you or me?
There we go. Okay. Thank you, Bill, for that great presentation and the whole committee that put in their ideas on that. I think this forms a great basis for future refinement and study. My feeling about the open space is to be a little bit more of a passive environment. I mean, I walk down there, 3 to 4 days a week. And I think Yasmin said about, residents coming down. Let's face it, the winter months, the weather may not be wonderful every day, but you can be there without any tourist crowds. In the middle of the best summer days of the year, there's beautiful mornings. You can read your newspaper on your iPad. We have Wi-Fi, or if you're old fashioned, you can sit there, have a cup of coffee and read a real piece of paper. And absolutely, I think residents will come down and gather, walk through there and meet and greet each other. I think it's a wonderful opportunity for that to happen. And yes, we need to have the 1128 park option on the ballot. And I think that will receive massive support to be done. And also, one of the speakers mentioned about the parking at the Sausalito Yacht Harbor. You need to be aware that the owners of that property, yes, it is most of the lease from the city, are actively considering the conversion of that lot to daily paid parking. And so that has a potential, no decisions obviously, and I'm not in a position to speak to them, but no decisions yet, but that would alleviate any availability of parking spaces downtown if that was a decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Peter.
All right, next on our list is David Sutto. David, you ready?
Hi again. I thought the question about how we're going to use that public space is a really great question. I'm not sure I know the answer to that yet, but I sure think we need to work on 1128 and modifying it so we can be a little more flexible downtown with letting residents use the space, especially as we continue down our history and we want to change how we use public spaces. I think that, you know, we need to think about, as Peter Van Meter just brought up, you know, we need to think about how that space would be used throughout the day and different days of the week. That gives more people opportunity, different people opportunities to get down there and experience the open, you know, our open space down there, and encourage people to get down there if there's, you know, different things happening or different uses throughout the day and throughout the week, whether that's, you know, food trucks or no tourists or whatever. And then a couple other things. I think, you know, we really need to be careful about giving us some protection from wind and fog. For all of us have spent lots of Jazz by the Bays down there. And the other thing is we need to look at, you know, Wi-Fi and cell reception down there. It's super poor. And that may inhibit certain people from using that space. If you can't FaceTime your family from that space, you know, that's going to limit some people how they use that space. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Kevin Carroll is next. Kevin.
Back again. I love the idea of eliminating parking lot 1 and making that all one big space. You know, I've heard this so many times in reference to Caledonia and to Bridgeway about trying to get the locals down in there. And the one proof you have of what draws locals is the Jazz by the Bay, the old Opera by the Bay, and the farmers market, which I think it was more of a bad timing, the hours that it was held. People just didn't want to go down after work, go home and then go back down the hill. But boy, they sure come down for Jazz by the Bay and the old Opera. They used to be down there too. I think, again, someone's already mentioned it, but I think that's a very underutilized space between the Spinnaker and the B of A building. I know it's marked on some of the maps as tour bus parking, but I've never seen a tour bus parked in there in my time. The other thing I'd just like to mention, at some point in the future, making Anchor Bay and Humboldt two-way streets really makes me nervous regarding keeping an eye out for pedestrians and bicyclists. And I think at some point down the road, as it's developed further, you really should have a meeting with the various bus operators, because there's a lot of mixture in those bus operators. You've got the Golden Gate Transit to and from the city, the Marin Transit, which does local routes, and the Muirwood Shuttle. You've got tour companies that have pickup and drop off buses, other buses that sit for an hour or two, and then a third group of buses that sit there for half a day. And I think getting the bus drivers and the companies' input on sight lines and where they're going to park and how they mix, at some point you really should talk to them, and not just the management, but also I am in favor of talking to the drivers too. The last thing I really, at some point, it has to be addressed. It's been a problem for years. It's still even a problem now in the middle of the reduction in people down there with COVID, is public bathrooms, particularly as it affects our women customers. Now that I'm a 70-year-old male who has to go to the bathroom more frequently, I am much more sympathetic to the line of women that are outside that women's bathroom. It's not unusual in the middle of the day for there to be no line in the men's room, or maybe 2 or 3 men in line, and there'll be 15 to 20 women lined up outside that bathroom. So I don't know if there's a way to utilize the B of A building, but it should be a big part of any future plans. And same things happen with Jazz by the Bay. I hear that complaint from local women about that's the one thing they don't like. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. Mr. Matt Smith is next. Matt, you still there?
I I am still here. If I can enable my video, it looks like I've been shut off of video here. I'm going to try to turn it back on, but if I can't, I'll just start talking. Okay, hi. So first of all, I love the conversation. This is fantastic. And I love the comments. I've been taking notes with my pen here. I love what Aaron was saying about the bikeability, ferry walking. Personally, if it were up to me, I think I'd get rid of the parking in its entirety and have this be sort of a green space. And I love the idea of food trucks, et cetera. I lived in San Francisco during maybe 10 years ago, the time when Golden Gate Park shut down traffic on Sundays, right? And so I can't describe to you the psychological relief and pressure that gave me as a jogger. Running through JFK Drive, right, without cars. You saw kids sort of on bikes and et cetera. It just took off a lot of the sort of psychological pressure of cars and fast moving big objects in favor of, you know, smaller familial environments. It was very, very, very fun environment. So I think when I think about that experience, I think about what this might mean here in terms of lower congestion. To me, it seems like it's usable space in the heart of an area that could really, really benefit from this traffic, positive foot traffic and bicycle traffic. So that seems to me a great idea. I totally agree with Yasmin and Jerome, I believe, on some of the other ideas as well. So I'm very much in favor of moving in that direction rather than sort of preservation of sort of maybe a more antiquated analog model of having these spots for cars. So that's kind of high level thought. It's not specific. I know there's much more technical considerations here as well as regulatory, but those are my comments as I have them. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Smith. Appreciate it. Shelby Van Meter, you're next on my list.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you. Jacques, you are doing or not Jacques, I mean Kevin. You are doing an amazing job of facilitating this, and I can't thank you enough. It has been smooth, and everyone gets a chance to say something, and you are a great presenter. Also, thanks to Bill and to all the others who have presented tonight. You've done incredible work. I am the founder of Sausalito Beautiful, and years ago, one of the things that bothered me most was the fact that we had little postage stamp plazas and parks all along Bridgeway, 4 of them to be exact. The Ice House Plaza, Kashkai's Plaza, the Del Mar Park, and the Yi Tak Chi Park, all of which are very, very different. At that time, Kashkai's and Ice House Plaza were just being planned, but the postage stamp sort of disparate designs of all of them, which still exist today, the effort that I encouraged to all the project leaders who came to a big forum at the Casa Madrona was to have some continuity so that there was at least plantings or something that tied all these places together. Now, if we have such a beautiful, larger space downtown, that doesn't become that's not problematic anymore, because now there is a center place, a center point, a focus that is the dominant look for downtown. So I couldn't be more in favor of the larger focus that Bill just explained. I think it's exceedingly exciting. And with all the options there are for many activities, I mean, there's so many possible uses for that space. David Sutto mentioned one thing that I was going to mention, so I won't belabor it, but our weather is such that, you know, using that space as we might all see in a beautiful sunny day, that's not, I don't know how many days a year that really is. If this year is any example, you know, the summer has been winter. So it seems to me that providing or keeping in mind design aspects that would address these kinds of days that we're having, and the wind and the cold, the rain is something really important. So this beautiful downtown could be used more than just on beautiful sunny days. So those are my comments. Thank you all. It has been an awesome, awesome presentation, and I couldn't be more excited about possibilities. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, most appreciated. Tom Riley, Mr. Tom Riley, you are next as our speaker. Great to see you.
Thank you, Kevin. Good to see everyone. This is fascinating. I am so excited about the vision, fully supportive. Kevin, great meeting. To our architects, great work, exciting. Thank you for your time. I believe, I've always said we've got to reclaim the downtown for our locals. And this is how you do it. This brings the locals down there. And instead of driving to Mill Valley to go to the depot, which a lot of us do, folks in Mill Valley will drive to Sausalito to come to our plaza. And our locals will be there. And these are the types of visitors we want. We want regional community that come to us, not as a day tourist to buy t-shirts, but come to us because they respect our galleries, they like our restaurants, and they like being in our town. And that includes our locals. So I'm super excited. The only opposition that can come to this are those that believe we need parking spaces. I can't imagine anyone else denying this beautiful plaza other than they believe we need parking spaces. And I want to say, I commend you for being creative and finding parking spots on Humboldt and Bay Street and the other streets. And I think every time you have a presentation like this, you should do a math that says, here's how many parking spots were taken away. Here's how many we're adding. Here's the net difference. Because I do believe if you're creative, we can make that net difference 0 and not lose spots. Someone said we could restripe parking lot 3 and add many spots. If Sausalito Yacht Harbor adds pay parking, we can make it a net 0 game. And I think that will help address any opposition or concern, just doing that math every time we have a presentation. But like others, I'm a big believer that parking spaces are going away as we have more shared vehicles and autonomous vehicles and less vehicle ownership. And so over time, I hope we continue to reduce asphalt and have more greenery along our waterfront. Thank you, though. I love this vision.
Thank you, sir. Next on my list is Carroll Roller. Carroll?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for the presentation, very inspirational. And just my 2 cents is the silver lining to COVID was that it kept me in Sausalito for 15 months. And like all of us, we were able to explore this wonderful city and really get into the nooks and crannies, walk down streets that we've never walked on before and appreciate the stairs. And one of the areas that I appreciate the most is that waterfront, and even the remote concept of being able to transform that place into a more accessible public space that lets it, you know, really step up to the full potential of that spot. You know, a view of San Francisco, one of the, you know, renowned cosmopolitans in the world, is very inspiring. And, you know, the ability to, you know, live in a town that finds that important also to be able to share with visitors coming into town, as well as residents that will be able to go there to be proud of that space is extremely, you know, a concept that's, you know, beyond inspiring. So needless to say, you know, I know there's a lot of details to work out and there's always trade-offs, but the idea of making this a possibility is something that I feel Sausalito really deserves. And surely I would definitely go down there more often than just jazz and blues, but to change all those, you know, asphalt into a green space and have events would be wonderful. So once again, thank you for Bill. Thank you for those drawings and the concept, and for everybody in, you know, the city of Sausalito. Thank you for entertaining this concept. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Carol. Next on the list is Meg Fossett. Meg, are you ready to talk to us?
Absolutely. Here we I can't seem to start my video. There we go. Thank you. I just think it's great to have heard the presentation from Bill. Okay, and I like the most flexible ones the best. I certainly think that 1128 needs to be on the ballots, and hopefully it will pass, because then it will give us flexibility to think further on the various concepts that the architects came up with. In general, I love the Bill's or the committee's concepts of connectivity and better circulation, a flexibility of space I like very, very much, where you can have bigger events and smaller events, and handling that would be really good for the town and for, I think. I like the concept of not spending money, very much money anyway, on repaving for car spaces until we decide whether we want paving at all. And the same thing with not replacing trees until you have to do some kind of repaving. I would like permeable, whatever it is that you put on the ground. I don't like the idea of concrete because it's hot. And I don't think it's very attractive. I think solar panels don't really make much sense down there because I think they would obstruct the view possibly. And in terms of Shelby's comment about being cold in the summer, which it definitely is, heat lamps would be really great to have in areas where there might be people trying to eat. But at any rate, I'm all in favor of getting this ordinance 1128 modified so we can explore more fully the various options. And I thank you all for your time and your volunteerism to come up with these concepts. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much. Kieran Culligan, you're next up.
It's quieter now here. For now. Just to the specific question that was the setup to this section and to Tom Riley's point, I'm a really good example of what it would take to use the area more around the ferry landing, around our downtown, because I'm about a 1.1, 1.2 mile walk from that area. And I'll do it, decently often, but I have to have some time on my hands. I can't be in a rush. I can't have both kids with me. Like there's a lot of conditions of really being able to be out there. And when I do want to go in that direction and I want to hurry a bit more, I don't want to go with my car because even with my parking card, it's trips back and forth, it's driving around, it's adding to congestion. Taking a bike, there's nowhere to put the bike. I know the few kind of railings I can lean against where no one will yell at me, but that's not a very good solution. It's not a very expandable solution. So there definitely is a lot of opportunity to get residents like me into that area. It just requires a change. I think there's an identity that really resonates with residents, with tourists, and with businesses alike. It's that we are a one-of-a-kind, unique seaside village that is just a stone's throw away from San Francisco. And I ask myself the question, and I ask all of you to ask yourselves the question, what's on brand with that? Is it abundant, cheap waterfront seaside parking? Or is it something else like we heard from Bill Hines and the professionals group today? I know what my opinion is. I won't pollute you all with it because you know what it is. But I think that's one way to think about this. And so thanks again to all of the effort that's been put into this. I'm really deeply appreciative.
Thank you, Kieran. It's so quiet over there. All right, I don't see any other hands raised, but I do recall Sandra Bushmaker was going to say a few more words, but I don't see her hand raised right now. So we're kind of finishing up, and I'd like to, since Michael actually has his physical hand raised, I think that would be great. Go ahead, Michael.
I'm still old school, I guess. I wanted to just tag on to a couple of things that have been said tonight. And I certainly want to commend you, Kevin, for your excellent job handling facilitating this dialogue. I want to second Tom Riley's comments about parking. I think for us to be successful to really build the consensus we need in our community here behind these future dreams that we want to turn into reality, we need to address how many parking spaces we will lose and how many we will gain, with the goal of very few net loss. And I think we can do that. I don't think we've done, we got more work to do on that. And I want to assure the public that will remain a key element of our thinking and our future presentations, okay? My takeaway tonight that really stands out, I heard from Yasmin and Warren Wells, and it is this: people will walk further if they enjoy the route and they're excited about the destination. I would hope that point of view gets repeated over and over, because I've heard just the opposite, that they will not walk very far to their car, and so they have to park right next to my business, okay? So keep that in mind, because I think it's really true. If we make this space truly enjoyable, they're going to enjoy the walk and be excited by the destination. I think another key element that needs to be carefully considered is the balance between active versus passive spaces. I would not want to see personally just lot 1 converted to a park. I agree with Jacques wholeheartedly that what brings people are really, particularly residents where they'll stay and spend time downtown, are the activities that are provided. And simply more passive park will not be enough. And I think in coming presentations, you're going to see a more defined mix of uses as well as activities. At least I'm, for one, going to encourage some more active spaces. I want to leave this with you all. Remember this, that Lot 1 used to be a railroad track, okay? All of Lot 1, 2, 3, and 4 were railroad tracks. And when the railroad ended, people wanted to know, what are we going to do with all that space? And people started parking cars there, like they did throughout all of California. When the railroads went away, they became roads and parking lots. But the people of Sausalito said, we don't want you to plant any trees in Lot 1 because we don't want that area to remain a parking lot forever, okay? So this has been decades and generations of pursuit to see a better use of Lot 1. And I think in the 20 years I've been pursuing this goal, I think we're making some real progress. And that's the most exciting thing of all. Thank you.
So a couple other comments for everybody. I do want to thank Bill Hines, Jacques Ullman, Michael Rex, and Bob, who is also part of this. Sorry.
Bob Hayes.
Bob Hayes, thank you very much, who has been part of this equation, who have all put in an enormous amount of time. I can't thank them enough for having this vision and for at least helping us out with this process. So what's going to happen next is probably one of the questions that might be on folks' minds. And at this point, I will be working with our consultant, BKF, as well as the local architects group to take a look at that, the project that we have funding for, to make sure that whatever is planned dovetails into a long-term goal as well. We'll also be working with several of our subcommittees, such as the Pedestrian Bicycle Advisory Committee, and making sure that we vet some of these things with them as well, and possibly bring it back to the City Council. I think I'd be optimistic to say it's going to happen this summer. So let's just say later in the fall to bring something back to them. And that would be a 30% design from BKF. As far as the vision, it's my understanding that this group will still continue to meet. And since we've had some really good input this evening from the public, great ideas to consider, I believe that the group will probably continue to meet in order to look at that long-term vision. We still have the task of trying to find funding to support that long-term vision. So working closely together with everybody will be very important. And then with that, I believe there's also an idea of putting it on the ballot for 11/28, and that should go back to council fairly soon as well. So with that, we're a little bit after 8, and I certainly want to thank everybody for joining me this evening. It was great to have so much public comment, and I do want to thank everybody, including the local architects group, for helping us out. One person behind the scenes is Megan Lockett. She's over to my left, and I want to thank her for all the help as well. So with that, I think we'll conclude the meeting this evening, and thank you all and have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Kevin.
Bye-bye.
Have a great night.